I do think that you can have a wonderful wine on its own and a dish that you love, but when you combine them, there's some sort of magic that happens in your mouth when it works that you could not have if you were just drinking the wine, just eating the food, and you don't satiate so quickly. You go back to the wine, you go to the food, you go back to even if it's champagne and potato chips. I
Which
could
I
eat a
love.
whole bag of chips that way if I
I
have a
will
good.
eat the whole bag that
Yeah,
way. I will.
exactly. You're my kind of woman, Tanisha. So for so many reasons, I think that's why food and wine pairing really draws people. My course specifically is called the Get Wine Smart course, a full-bodied framework to pair, buy, and taste wine like a pro. And the real emphasis is on the pairing. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 161. What makes wine and technology such a perfect pairing? Why should you try an online wine class? And how has technology empowered wine consumers? You'll hear those stories and more during my chat with Tanisha Townsend on her podcast, Wine School Dropout. Now, on a personal note before we dive into the show, great news, the deal is done. My agent and I were in talks right down to the wire the day before Christmas Eve, and we had to decide between two terrific publishers. One offered a 2-book deal, which is a really strong vote of confidence in an author's career. Personally, I felt overwhelmed committing to another book before this one is even finished. Both publishers have amazing editors, but the one we went with is absolutely brilliant. His name is Russell Smith, and he is a columnist for the Globe and Mail now for 20 years, covering arts and culture. He also hosted the popular CBC radio program about language called And Sometimes Why. He's taught creative writing for the Masters of Fine Arts degree programs at the University of Guelph and the University of Toronto, and published 8 books, several of which were nominated for the Giller Prize and the Governor General's Award, among others. I want you to get a sense of why I decided to work with him. He has a really great vision for this memoir. Plus, he really gets the premise. It's a little bit like dating when someone just gets you and you don't need to keep explaining yourself. Russell is the acquisitions editor at Dundurn Press, Canada's oldest and largest independent publishing house. In 2019, 3 venture capitalists who made a lot of money in high tech bought the company. So this is a traditional publisher that also has a future forward outlook. And since the high tech industry is part of my story, I think that's also a great match. So why not go with my previous editor, who is now head of Doubleday, an imprint of Penguin Random House? Well, here's what she had to say. Having worked with Natalie, I know how much she brings to the table, and I think there's a significant potential readership for her memoir. I don't see an obvious editorial match in my group, at least at the moment. So to be practical about it, I don't think it would make sense for us right now. Between maternity leaves and pending changes, it wouldn't have a natural editorial champion here. And it's only for that reason that it's not a natural right now for Doubleday's consideration. Timing is everything. Publishing may be traditional, but it's undergoing some oceanic changes right now, especially with the pending merger between Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster. And here's the thing. Editors can love your book, but they cannot make the yes-no decision alone. They have to present it to an acquisitions committee that includes members of marketing, sales, publicity, finance, and so on, and convince them to say yes to a project that's a minimum of a $50,000 investment, apart from any advances the author gets. And we'll talk about those in another episode. Another Canadian publisher said, I've taken this one to the team, and we think there's going to be a big audience for it, but we're not likely to be the right publisher for it. Usually when we tackle memoir, we try to include an overt political or sociological aspect to it. Best of luck to Natalie, though. I think this will make quite a splash. All righty. Earlier that week, we had several US editors interested in the book. One really went to bat for it, but alas. I'll share with you what she said so you get more insight into this process. I love the writing in this memoir and was pleased that my team did as well. Natalie has such a witty voice and an incredible talent for connecting with readers. I thoroughly enjoyed the read. After much discussion with my team, however, I'm sorry to say I wasn't approved to move forward with an offer. Everyone agreed with me on the many credits for the book, but ultimately we struggled to land on a solid positioning that we believe will stand out in the category. By the way, the memoir category is huge, so that's a valid point. Anywho, you'll find a link to a blog post called Diary of a Book Launch, where I share my behind-the-scenes stories about the journey of taking this memoir from idea to publication in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/161. If you want a more intimate insider seat beside me on this journey, please let me know if you'd like to become a beta reader and get a sneak peek at the manuscript. Email me at natalie@nataliemaclean.com. I'd also love to hear from you if you've discovered a fabulous new wine we should know about, a tip that would help us enjoy wine more, or if you have a question for me. In the show notes, you'll find my email contact and a link to the post Diary of a Book Launch, a full transcript of my conversation with Tanisha, a link to her website and podcast, how you can join me in a free online wine and food pairing class, and where you can find the live stream video version of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's all in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/161. Okay, on with the show. And just a note that the music for Tanisha's podcast is licensed under Creative Commons, and you'll find that link in the show notes.
Hello, and welcome to these bonus episodes of Wine School Dropout. It's the summer, and while we're out of school, per se, we at Wine School Dropout want to share a summer in wine with you. In this mini season, you'll hear about some cool things happening in the wine world. Think of this a little like summer school, and we're back in session. Enjoy. Natalie MacLean is the host of Unreserved Wine Talk and was selected as one of the best drinks podcasts by the New York Times. And she offers popular online wine and fruit pairing courses at www.nataliemaclean.com. Both of her books, Red, White, and Drunk All Over, A Wine-Soaked Journey from Grape to Glass, which is actually one of the first wine books I read when I was starting on my journey, and also Unquenchable, A Tipsy Quest for the World's Best Bargain Bottles, were chosen as Amazon's best books of the year. Natalie has many accolades. Named World's Best Drinks Journalist at the Food Media Awards, won 4 James Beard Foundation Journalism Awards. She's the only person to have won both the M.F.K. Fisher Distinguished Writing Award from James Beard and the M.F.K. Fisher Award for Excellence in Culinary Writing from Madame d'Escoffier International. I gotta admit, I fangirled a little bit in the beginning, but then we started talking about wine and tech, and my 2 worlds collided. I settled into a groove. You know I can talk about those subjects all day long. I pulled myself together to bring you this conversation with Natalie MacLean. Hello, Natalie. How are you?
I'm fine, Tanisha. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me for my podcast. For the people who don't know who you are, if you can give us a quick introduction of yourself.
Well, I've been writing about wine for about 20 years, so I'm of an older vintage, but still, aging well, I hope. But I was in the high-tech world before I got into wine, and I would have never thought that they would overlap, but magically they did. The head office of the company that I worked for was in Mountain View, California. It's now the campus of Google. It was a supercomputer company. So I started making my weekend jaunts up to Napa and Sonoma and got a real taste for wine. So they started to meld together at that point. But it wasn't, as I say, until I went on maternity leave that I was in a sleep-deprived state to think that I should start writing about wine. And I always joke with my son, yes, you drove me to drink. But he knows that I'm not serious. But anyway, so while on mat leave, I pitched a story, Wine on the Internet, which 20 years ago was real news. They took that and it went from there. I started writing about wine regularly, did not go back to my high-tech job, and have loved it ever since.
Okay, I love that, which is a great segue into what we're going to be talking about, how wine and tech go together. So It's interesting that you started off in tech, since I started off in tech as well. So we definitely have that in common. When you first started writing and not quite sure if you were going to leave tech or what was going to come of it, did you already kind of think that it could match together or it could meld together? Or you were just like, you know what, I just want to do this, let's do it?
First of all, I was drawn to wine itself. I didn't even like beer, whiskey, anything growing up. So it wasn't until my late 20s that I actually got into wine after I graduated from an MBA program, finally had some money. And so
that'll do it.
Exactly. And the fact I couldn't cook. So my then husband and I would go out to restaurants all the time, which I absolutely loved. And wine was very much a part of that experience. So first came the love of wine. Then came, well, I've always had a love of writing, just not the confidence to think I could actually earn a living writing. So I got practical, got the MBA, had a mother who said, make sure you're always financially independent because you never know. So I did all of that, went into marketing and high tech. So anyway, once I went off on maternity leave and thought, well, I need to keep my brain alive, I'll pitch this article. And that went well. I started to think, yes, I think there are more intersections between wine and tech than just, okay, who's selling wine online right now? I do think that these two worlds, seemingly opposite, you'll know, Tanisha, in the tech world, it's fail forward fast, like make mistakes, correct and iterate. And in the wine world, it's like, let's make changes every 1,000 years. So,
it's funny because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. So you think, oh my gosh, could you get two more different worlds? But I think the Venn set, or the intersection, is fascinating. When you can take an old world culture product and give it the support of new technology, that's where the magic is. And we've seen it online, social media, podcasts, everything else, where people are learning about wine, online courses like those I teach. It's just an explosive growth in how people learn about and buy wine, and all other facets of their wine appreciation and education are being assisted these days by technology. Really, I love the pairing.
I want to put a pin in that, the online wine class, because I want to get back to that. Your first article was about wine and the internet, and you said that was some years ago.
Yeah.
Based on what you wrote then and the ideas and thoughts then, how do you think things have or have not changed as far as wine and the internet today?
So many things have changed. Back then, websites were pretty much brochureware. So let's take the little pamphlet we have about our winery and just slap it online. It was very much reading about a winery, reading about a wine. And what's evolved since then, of course, is a lot of online commerce and people feeling secure enough to buy wine online, secure enough to learn about wine online through courses and so on, or thinking that it's even doable. That has changed. The evolution, using the tools more effectively and productively. You know, you go back to when television became popular. But at first, television shows were just adaptations of radio shows. All they did is took the old medium and sort of plunked it on the top of the new technology, not really using the new technology to its fullest potential. But of course, that comes with time, and you learn the strengths and unique features and abilities of the new technology before you, I think, make full use of it. So that happened with wine on the internet, for sure. I think wine lovers, wineries, and so on need to make sure that even with the new technology, it's still an interactive conversation. You don't lose track of that. The old world of visiting the tasting room and having those deep connections, you can do some of that online if you use the technology in the right way.
I totally agree. I truly believe that, COVID, yes, it was terrible, is, and it's still wreaking havoc on places and things like that. But some of the things that it's done for technology and forcing people to appreciate it, implement it, adapt to it, I think that is something that has really accelerated due to it.
It has. It's like a forcing function where I think, it's brought the future forward 10 years at least, especially in the wine world, where it just would not have happened without COVID. And I agree with you. COVID is bad in so many ways, but there are some bright spots in terms of the changes it encouraged. And people got through that mind block of, I can buy wine online safely. I can learn about it in a class, all of this sort of thing. And now I hope that we'll continue to have sort of a hybrid so that wineries or courses, whatever, will continue to offer the online option, because there's just so many advantages for people who can't travel, mobility issues, and so on. I hope they don't abandon the online because they've already invested the learning, the time, the infrastructure, the funds. And I hope we go forward with a hybrid of in-person and online in the future.
Absolutely. It's nice to have so many things accessible and available to you that weren't available before. And the two biggest things that I think of are thinking about buying wine itself and then being able to learn about wine. It's not like I'm just reading a book about wine online. There are actually classes that exist that you can take that can teach you things about wine, which leads me into some online food and wine pairing classes. I know you do other classes besides just food and wine pairing, but that's one of your big and popular ones. 2 questions. Why do you think that's like your most popular? And then also, what kind of things do you cover in there?
So I think food is far less intimidating than wine. So we don't need any vintage charts to choose our cantaloupes. We're starting to care more and more where the food is grown, of course, but it just doesn't get into that complexity of wine and all of the appellations and the years and aging and all the rest of it. I found when I start with the food first, people are less intimidated. So let's start with a dish you love, whether it's roast chicken or whatever. And then let's, from there, find a wine to pair with it. People find it so much more approachable and accessible and practical, because that's the question most people have when they open a bottle. It's always nice to enjoy wine on its own, but you're usually opening it with dinner, with friends. And so those pairings do come into play. And that's why I think that topic is the most popular. It's the one I focus on. There's so many different pairings that we cover in my course, from spicy hot dishes to vegetarian to seafood to your different grilled meats, and definitely cheeses is a whole other world there. But I think that's where the passion is, and the practicality and the pure hedonism, because I do think that you can have a wonderful wine on its own and a dish that you love, but when you combine them, there's some sort of magic that happens in your mouth when it works that you could not have if you were just drinking the wine, just eating the food, and you don't satiate so quickly. You go back to the wine, you go to the food, you go back to even if it's champagne and potato chips. I can eat a whole bag of chips that way. If I have
eat the whole bag that way.
Yeah, exactly. You're my kind of woman, Tanisha. So for so many reasons, I think that's why food and wine pairing really draws people. My course specifically is called the Get Wine Smart course, a full-bodied framework to pair, buy, and taste wine like a pro. And the real emphasis is on the pairing.
And also the thing is, it's something that people don't feel excluded from. Sometimes people can feel excluded from some wine courses because they're like, oh, well, this wine is too expensive, or I can't necessarily find this wine because you're talking about this region. But with food and wine pairing, literally everybody eats. Like we all eat. So everybody can think about, okay, you don't eat meat. All right, then vegetarian. Okay, you eat cheese. You eat, you eat. So there is something in it for everyone, and it is very approachable.
Absolutely. And even the wines themselves, Tanisha, like I recommend wines at different price ranges and that you can find locally, no matter where you live. And that's why I do have students from all over the world. A lot of them are in North America, but, I still, the Netherlands, Brazil, Australia, even some in France, because I try to make the wines very easy to find in your local liquor stores. And that is important to people, but it's easy to do. But if you're sitting in a physical class, you're going to give the wines that the professor has poured, which may or may not be to your liking.
Or you could ever find again. I mean, you just.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yes.
What has surprised you about teaching these courses? Whether it's a pairing that you found or something about teaching, learning, or even just something with your students. What surprised you with these courses?
It's kind of like some of the same surprises I got from writing the two books that I wrote. It's how people use the course or, what they make of it. Because as a creator and even a course instructor, guide, whatever, you have a vision in mind for what you've produced. But your students are going to make of it what they want. I've had a lot of couples, husband, wife, husband, treat it like date night. So they'll take my course, and they'll do it together. And they only have to pay the one course fee. So I'm not regulating that for sure. Right. But they can't do that with a physical course. And, for those with children, they're not trying to find parking and a babysitter and so on. So they love the flexibility of it. And then another few people have told me that they bring over friends and stream my course because all of the videos are also recorded. You can go at your own pace. You got lifetime access and all that. Okay. Plus I do live tastings. So they'll take the recorded tastings and stream them up on a big screen or their television or even setting on an iPad on a dining room table and use it as a guided tasting where they'll stop and start the video and all the friends are tasting the wines that they brought together and commenting, and then they'll press play again and get me to yabber on and then stop again, taste and comment. I just found that interesting because those were use cases I hadn't even thought of when I created the course because I just wasn't thinking that way. So those are pleasant surprises. I love how people use the course to suit them. I love the group that we've created with these online courses.
That's the cool thing, because maybe just in your own town, your own city, you wouldn't be able to find this community or always be able to get there due to timing and whatever.
Yes.
But with it being online, or with things now being online, you have access to it whenever, wherever. Yes. You can take it with you. Like, okay, I can watch it here in France. Or, if I go somewhere else and, I'm like, oh, well, what, let me check out this before I go to dinner. Let me check this one module out right quick. Maybe it'll help me out before I get to dinner. That is something that I love about how things are now moving online, and it's becoming a lot more popular. And also, even logistically for us being wine educators, we don't have to find a physical location to rent out and have this space like, okay, we need a space for 10 people. Okay, this time 15 people. Let's set up all the glasses. Let's get all the paper. Let's have everything set up. We don't have to do that. All we have to do is put on some lipstick and a shirt.
Yes. Yep.
Comb our hair a little, and we could do it. I love that intersection of the online classes with wine. Now, this is one question that I'm just kind of going to throw at you since we're talking tech. What is something, we mentioned buying wine online and then online classes. What is some other wine technology that you'd heard of recently that you're kind of fascinated by or really interested in?
Well, we were talking about this, Tanisha, on Unreserved Wine Talk, my podcast, because you have such a great background in tech. And artificial intelligence definitely intrigues me. How they're using AI to maybe detect fraud and fakes in wine or to enhance the wine experience. Gosh knows where they're going to go with this. Like if it's going to be virtual reality, I'm not sure if that'll work or not, but who knows? But just the explosion of new technologies, I am excited to see where that goes, including non-fungible tokens, NFTs. Yes, I can't wait to see how those technologies are used in the world of wine. And I think it could be a real service to reduce the number of fakes and fraudulent bottles, especially for collectors, more expensive wines, but even everyday wines, because fakes and frauds hurt the business. So I think there is just some remarkable possibilities ahead.
I'm still trying to come up to speed on really getting a handle and understanding NFT.
Yes.
What that means and how it can be used in the wine industry. And then also some of the AI technology. I actually drank a bottle of wine over the weekend, and it has an app that you can download, and then you hold it over the bottle, and then like the label comes alive. It's things climbing off the front of the label and things are moving around. And then if you turn it to the back label, then it gives you an option of tasting notes, food and wine pairings, and just other fun information. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like this aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting, even if you're at dinner with friends or at a restaurant, like being able to do that and get some backstory on the wine might be a good conversation starter.
And it also gives the consumer the option to, like, the information is in their hands. They don't have to feel like I have to ask this, or I need to do some Google searches, or how can I figure this out? This gives them all the information that they need so they can do whatever they want with it. Same with, your online classes, same with the smart label. You have the information available to you now. Now you can do with it what you want. And I think people really like having the access, the availability, and just to decide on their own, okay, how do I want to engage with this? When do I want to engage with it? And being able to do so on their own time.
Absolutely. And that was exactly my motivation for launching mobile apps. They're not AI, but they do scan the front label, and it gives you immediate access to my reviews and other reviews on the app. Or you can scan the back barcode. So it's got two readers on it. One's optical label and the other is barcode reader. And people just find that so helpful, because I think, again, going back to the stigma of wine, no one wants to ask a question. They don't know what to ask the sommelier or the wine liquor store staff. They don't want to seem silly or stupid or not knowing. But, that's ability to just scan and get all the info on that wine, food pairings, tasting notes, other wines that are like this, real-time inventory and stock in your liquor store, put it in your virtual cellar, all of that we bundled into the mobile apps that we have. But again, it's to be your pocket sommelier, to put the power in your hands and not to have to ask, even though I think asking liquor store staff and sommeliers is one of the best things you can do. And again, if you can merge that technology with the human interaction, that's a sweet spot.
Yes, if they can come up to you, they have the app on their phone and they're like, okay, so I just found out this. And they can talk to someone from the staff to ask a couple of questions based on information that they've gotten. That's also a fantastic thing. And again, makes them feel a lot more comfortable too.
Exactly.
Being able to arm people with at least a few words that they can use to speak to the sommelier or speak to, the wine shop, things like that. Absolutely. So with your mobile wine app, what is the name of it? Can you tell us all?
It's just under my name. If you search the Apple Store or Android, so it's for both platforms, under my name, Natalie McLean, wine reviews, but even just my name will bring it up. That's how you'll find it. It's free. And you can download it, and you've got all these different features, shopping lists, wish lists, your personal cellar, all the rest of it. You can do all of that within the app.
So you are a very busy woman.
Yes, I'm an insomniac.
Right. So you're writing articles, you're doing online wine courses, you have an app. Your podcast, Unreserved Wine Talk, was selected as one of the best drinks podcasts by the New York Times.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your podcast, how you started that.
Sure. I started it in late 2018. So I thought I was late to the game, but as you know, Tanisha, podcasts are just exploding. And I absolutely love podcasts as a medium. I always listened to podcasts, and I toyed around with it back in 2008, but I just didn't really get onto the RSS feed, actually launching it into Apple. And so even I'm going to sound ancient again, but before podcasts, I would listen to satellite radio at night, and I would hear the BBC blow in and out over the Atlantic, depending on the weather patterns. I've always loved radio. To me, the voice is so expressive. And when you're just listening to someone's voice, you really activate the theater of your mind. And it's intimate, where, our voices are only millimeters away from your brain.
Absolutely, yes.
You get the emotion and the inflections and so on that you won't get just by reading text. And yet I think there's a lot more engagement than, say, watching the visuals. So all of that drew me to creating a podcast. And then what keeps me going is interviewing interesting people like you. I love digging into your story and then exploring, as we did, the Paris wine bars and all of that, but also your backstory of how you got there. Because I think what we're most interested in as human beings is stories, people's stories. How did they get there? And how does potentially my story as a listener relate to the person I'm listening to being interviewed? Like, what can I take away, whether it's learning about wine or perhaps they made some decisions, some life decisions. Maybe I can learn from that. Or maybe I'm even thinking of getting into a wine career. So there's all sorts of reasons, but I think it's that fundamental love of listening to stories that brought me to podcasts and keeps me going with them.
The thing about podcasting too that's different, especially when you're doing an interview style like how we're doing now, the story can change. It's not like if you're writing, you just, okay, you know what you're writing about. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then it has to follow this certain path. But when you're talking, when you're having a conversation, it can go in different directions,
Yes.
but it still all makes sense. You can uncover some new things, then go down another rabbit hole, so to speak, and then come back and then go down another one. But it all makes sense and people are still fully engaged.
And it's like you're eavesdropping too sometimes. Like, I love it when I can listen to someone that I'd never get to talk to on somebody else's podcast, but I'm sort of like a fly on the wall listening to these two people. So interesting. And I feel like I've sat down with them personally. So I love that.
Also, you just have a great voice. Like your speaking voice is just great. Like, sometimes you'll hear some things you're like, oh, I don't want to listen to that too long. But no, your voice is fantastic for podcasting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you find that it was kind of a nice natural progression from writing articles, going into podcasting?
Yeah, because the signature throughout is storytelling. So whether it's the books, the magazine articles, podcasts, even in the online courses, I'm trying to tell stories because that's what we remember. A list of facts, no one's going to remember that, or going to be hard pressed unless you're studying for a professional certification. But if you can embed the learning on a story, the mind will remember that. I'll always remember Madame Veuve Clicquot from Champagne invented riddling. She, drilled the holes in her kitchen table and what was riddling all about to disgorge the sediment. In my mind, it's hung on that story as opposed to what is riddling? What are the processes? Here are the 36 steps. I remember it more when they're embedded in stories.
Stories and also visuals. So for me, it's, can you show me a picture of something? Do you have a little video of this? And by video, that can mean you just put a bunch of pictures together and set it on a timer through some music in the background. Then I'll remember it. Riddling, it really stuck for me when I visited Champagne, saw the bottles there, and you can touch them and you can play and twist them, yourself. Yeah. They're like, oh, you're not going fast enough. The master riddler used to riddle 700 bottles every hour. I'm like, what?
Carpal tunnel.
Right. I'm like, I'm going to blow my wrist out at the first week. Like I'm done. Like I'm fired. Yeah, is there workers comp for this?
Yes. No, you just get more champagne.
Okay. And then you won't even know. It dulls the pain. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to Unreserved Wine Talk, where you interview various guests about various wine topics and tell stories and things like that. Do you have some favorite guests that you've interviewed?
Yes. Well, first, you would be top of the list, Tanisha, of course.
Of course. Thank you.
But you know all about that interview. So we'll talk about a few others. So I interviewed Charles Back from South Africa, winemaker there, and he's just so hilarious. I also had him in my book, Red, White, and Drunk All Over. He just has such a great sense of humor and storytelling. He wrapped his personal story around why he got into wine. He has this goat herd. You might have seen his wine labels. They're rather cheeky. So he has the Goat Father and Goats de Rome. So he was so smart. He is so savvy. So when the French authorities wanted to sue him for copyright infringement, he took a busload of all his vineyard workers down to the French embassy in Cape Town. And they presented the French ambassador with some vacuum sealed goat droppings for the French ambassador's garden. They handed him goat poop and they were singing all kinds of songs and so on. And then Charles says, I don't know how they heard about it, but CNN showed up. And wink, wink. And they started broadcasting it and it gave him so much publicity. The French authorities backed off because it looked like they were being bullies. Whether or not that was true, I'm not commenting, but he got so much publicity. And then he told me as we were talking, he said, but it's sort of died down now that the French authorities backed off. But if there's anything you could do to stir it up again, I'd really appreciate it.
Stir it up.
It's really great. So I love guests like that who can share those kinds of stories. And again, you still get the wine learning out of it.
Absolutely. Now, continuing on your storytelling, you are going to be telling stories in a third book. Yes?
Yes, ma'am. So my first two books, if I may, were more like travel adventure stories. So there was Red, White, and Drunk All Over. You can see how serious.
I'm familiar. Yes,
very serious wine book.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. And then second one was Unquenchable, a tipsy search for the world's best bargain wines. So they were told in first person with stories like Charles Bach. But the third book that I'm working on now is quite different in that it's a memoir. And it's from one slice of life. It's kind of a behind the scenes look at being a woman in the world of wine. We talked on that on my podcast, but also I think some surprising insights for people who love wine and always thought, wow, what if I could make my passion, my hobby, my career and actually get paid for it? This sort of takes you into that world of what it's like, what it's really like. And, there's ups and there's downs. But my stories from one very eventful year of my life, that's going to be the basis of it. But you'll still learn about wine, I hope, and be entertained.
When it comes to you writing your books, how do you get the ideas to even start to say, okay, this is what I want my book to be about?
I think it was an evolution from the approach I took for magazine writing. It's like, let's find someone really interesting. Usually it was a winemaker who didn't pay attention to his PR person and said things he or she probably shouldn't have said on the record, and had a colorful personality, made good wine. That was a prerequisite. Wasn't all about marketing and guffaws. So had that combination, like Randall Graham in California, Bonnie Doon. He's one such. I mean, he has experimented with so many things in winemaking. It's fascinating. Some of them were just a bit nutty, I think, but others proved to be great for the wine. So the ideas for the books come from the people. I always start with people first. Who do I want to interview? What is it about? Where are they? And then how can the various interviews and stories thread together for one sort of narrative arc, if you will, if it's a book?
Now, I do want to pop back right quick because I didn't get this part when we were talking about food and wine pairings. Do you have a favorite food and wine pairing?
Yes, but it's very unusual.
So like unusual.
Okay, yeah. So in Canada, we have ketchup chips. I don't know if you have ketchup chips in Paris.
No.
Yeah, it sounds like an abomination, I know, but I have a weakness for ketchup chips. And I thought they'd be really sweet, and therefore a bone-dry rosé would not work. I'm always trying bad pairings so I can warn people, my liver for their liver, my palate for their palate. It's all about self-sacrifice, as you know, Tanisha. So I was trying ketchup chips with rosé, and it actually worked. The ketchup chips weren't as sweet as I thought. And the rosé had this sort of strawberry raspberry flavor that was a nice dovetail with the ketchup. It was weirdest thing, but it's my favorite pairing now. If you don't have access to ketchup chips, then any chips will do, I think, just about, because I think rosé is one of those universal wines that can go with so many different dishes. It's got the flavor of red wine, but not the heavy oak and the tannin and the alcohol.
And maybe you can just get regular chips and put ketchup on them.
You could. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
You could just dip them in ketchup.
Yeah, ketchup, I was surprised to learn, has more sugar per volume than ice cream. And that's why I was thinking the chips would be really sweet and ruin the wine. But this worked.
I have some rapid fire questions for you. We did not go over these in advance because I wanted rapid.
Goodness knows what you're going to get here, Tanisha.
Right. But these are easy. These are easy ones. Okay. Cheese or chocolate?
Ooh, cheese.
Cheese. Ice cream or gelato?
Ice cream.
Call or text?
Text.
podcast series or Netflix series?
Oh, that's a hard one, but I'll go with podcasts. I have to be loyal.
Right. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Rooftop barbecue or backyard barbecue?
Oh,
Like rooftop party or backyard party?
Rooftop, yeah.
Okay, now this one may be a little tougher. Okay. Would you rather go without your phone for a week or without the internet for a week?
Oh my. I guess I'll give up my phone because I can get online and check my email. God, so pathetic.
You can do anything. You just have to stay home. I just have to stay home for a week.
That's true. I'm an introvert, so I do that anyway. So just give me my internet, please. Don't take that away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if I don't have my phone, like I use that so much for directions.
Right.
So I don't know how I have
that's a tough one.
But you having to go online to figure out where you were going and like write down the directions and then take that paper with you and you go out. And if you make a wrong turn, then it's like, oh no.
Yeah, where am I?
Oh gosh. So I'd have to go back old school like that and write it down on a piece of paper and just walk down the street like, okay, I think it's this way. I think it's this way.
That could be an adventure. Getting lost could be a story.
If you're not in a hurry.
That's true.
Yes, it absolutely could. All right, Natalie, as we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention and share with us?
I don't think so, Tanisha. As you know, I'm going to offer your listeners my templates. So I just thought I'd show them. I have these food and wine pairing templates. They're free for anyone who wants to get them at nataliemclean.com/school in honor of Your Name podcast. So people find these quite helpful in the kitchen or wherever they are, the templates.
Okay, well, where can people find you online?
Sure. Everything is at nataliemclean.com. So that's nataliemaclean.com. So you'll find my podcast, the books, the courses, everything else, wine reviews, mobile apps. You can get links to them there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for talking to me, talking with us at Wine School Dropout. We loved hearing about your story, how you meld wine and tech, online classes, food and wine pairings, and we know you prefer cheese after dinner.
That's right. And Tanisha, I can't wait. Someday we're going to go to one of your favorite wine bars in Paris. We're going to have a glass of wine and some cheese, maybe Comte or something like that. Yes. Yes. And I can't wait for that. So thank you. I love chatting with you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. That's a wrap. This podcast was produced by Studio Ochenta, hosted by me, Tanisha Townsend. Our executive producer is Lori Martinez. Our sound editor is Luis Raul Lopez Levi. Our theme was done by Gabriel Dalmaso. Music is by Makai Beats. Our art is by Tiffany DeLune. Follow us at Wine School Dropout on Instagram and check out ochentastudio.com for full transcripts of this and every episode of the show. See you next week. Have you been dreaming of sitting in a wine bar in Paris again? Well, why not purchase the ebook 75 in the 75? 75 wine bars to visit in Paris. All of my wine bar recommendations and pictures in one place. Tons of photos of the City of Light. Classic or natural wines, big Euros or Centimes, we've got all tastes covered in this wine guide. For purchase, visit my website, www.girlmeetsglass.com, and select 75 in the 75 wine guide.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Tanisha. In the show notes, you'll find my email contact and the post Diary of a Book Launch, a full transcript of my conversation with Tanisha, a link to her website and podcast, how you can join me in a free online wine and food pairing class. And you'll also find the live stream video version of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube. every Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's all in the show notes at nataliemclain.com/161. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or want to be a beta reader of my new memoir at natalie@nataliemclain.com. You won't want to miss next week when I chat with Lawrence Francis, host of the Interpreting Wine podcast with more than 430 episodes, 300,000 downloads in 150 countries. Whew. In the meantime, if you missed episode 56 of this podcast, go back and take a listen. I chat about champagne with the restaurant guys, Mark Pascal and Francis Schott. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
So you go into a restaurant, you sit down, there's a daunting wine list. It's a tome. What do you recommend?
First of all, I look at what kind of joint am I in? Is this a classy place that has some staff who are going to be wine knowledgeable? Could be a sommelier, could be the wine dude. But if there's somebody there that I think really does know the list, I'm going to ask that person. The person who works in the restaurant always knows his or her wine list better than I do because chances are they've tasted the wines on the list. Let's hope they have. And then if there's really no one in sight or no one's coming forward in terms of who knows the list, I'm going to look for regions I may personally be familiar with, or what is this restaurant specializing in? If it's an Italian restaurant, I'm going to look at the Italian list because it's going to match the food, most likely, but also let's hope they have a special passion for the wines from that country. So I'll narrow it down further to that, and then, of course, I'll stay within my price range, and then I'll hope for the best.
If you like this episode, please tell one friend about it this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in the wines and stories we discussed. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a sparkling wine to celebrate 2022. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclain.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.